I'm sitting on the side of the road in Waianae in my car outside Starbucks, and my computer is going to die. So I'm going to switch over to my phone. That's why there's two of me on the screen. And I'll totally be busted because when it switches to the phone, I don't think you can do virtual background. So you'll see a car. So when that happens, don't be shocked. Just trying to, make life exciting, right? Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody. Aloha Hivalani, glad you're here. I want to welcome everybody to the Ike Kaiahulu Community Engagement Talk Story Series. We are in our, wow, it's 2022. We started in fall 2020. So, wow, 2 years. And this is our first community partner guest that is here today of the semester. So that's pretty cool, the fall semester. And wait, are we in fall? No, we're in spring. Hello. Okay, we're almost to 2 years. So one of the purposes of this Talk Story series is really to connect with our partners in the community and really kind of talk about things that we can nurture collaboratively. That's kind of the theme that we are hoping to perpetuate at least this year in this series. And unfortunately, we're virtually collaborating. But this is my hope that after having this Talk Story series for such a long time, relatively, every month, that we are then will be able to come together in person. So I'm hoping that we can learn and connect virtually and then eventually face to face. So I'd like to introduce you to Dean Wilhelm from Ho'okua'aina, which is an organization that I have admired from afar. I have not been there to their location, so it is a goal of mine to get myself over there. And so I'm excited to learn more and more about what's happening there, why it's happening. But one thing that I really connected to in doing a little bit of research is their life strategies through the cultivation of kalo. And just that phrase right there really excited me because it's not just, kalo. I mean, is kalo ever just kalo? Not really. It is always way more than that. So maybe this is the first time I've seen kalo in a sentence that talks about life strategies. And so that kind of excited me. So I'm hoping today, Dean, that you'll be able to kind of tell us your story, tell us the story of your family and kind of how you got to where you are in developing what is happening now at Ho'okua'aina. So I'll turn it over to you and you can talk story a little bit.
Okay, well, Maikai, thank you. Thank you, Noi. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm really, really honored that I would be asked to be a part of these types of discussions, and want to thank you all for giving me that opportunity. So mahalo nui. I'd like to start off similar to how we start off when people come here to our aina, really wanting to ask everybody. So I'm going to ask for participation, and that's good because there's not too many of us, so this should be easy. Name, if you could introduce yourself, name, where you're from, and then why you're here today. What are you, what brought you to this discussion? And then maybe perhaps, what you're looking to perhaps get out of this discussion. Because when people come here, I'm always fascinated by the responses when I ask people, why did you come? And generally speaking, we'll have community groups who come on, say, a Saturday. Why did you come here on your precious Saturday morning to come and jump in the lepo, in the mud with us. It's always fascinating for me to because I believe intentions really are everything in many ways. And so if I could please ask that of everyone who is engaged, even the is it Adam from the media?
John.
John, sorry, John.
John,
You
join
look
us,
like a
John.
guy whose name is Adam, who used to work with us. So maybe that's where my mind went. I'm bad with names. So even John, and even if it's just because you're working and this is your gig, that's fine. I respect that. Honesty is always the best policy for us. So maybe if we could, well, Noe, maybe you could just kind of introduce yourself and share, and then we'll take it down the roll, however that works. Please.
Okay, sounds good. I'm Noe Tupo, and I am an instructor of Hawaiian and Pacific Studies at Windward Community College. And I'm also the director of Ike Kaiaulu Community Engagement Program. Yeah, that's me. I don't know. Oh, and what made me come here? It's my job.
Yeah. Oh.
The job. And I'm really, really excited. What I think is exciting is how it's a family thing at Ho'okua Aina.
Okay.
So I want to find out more.
Mahalo. Celeste, is it?
Oh, yes. Aloha. So my name is Celeste. I'm born and raised Kaneohe, currently live in Waikane right now. The reason why I'm here is because of what I love to do is working with Kalo and working with students, especially those that come out of HYCF. So I currently work here at WCC as an educational specialist as an 89-day hire. And I'm also contracted with Olomana to assist with their kalo cultivation going on at the farm. So I'm still learning. It's brand new, fresh to me. So I'm still kind of getting comfortable with that area and starting to work with the students from HYCF, hopefully soon when they'll be able to come out. So that's kind of my pride and joy and why I am here currently attending to listen to more Ike that you have.
Oh, my kai, thank you. And this is the farm, is this the farm with kupu on or is it your, what farm are you referring to? Or
the farm at Olomana.
Oh, at Olomana.
Kupu Aina.
Kupu Aina. Okay, is that on the, that's on the, right on the YCF property, right?
It's on the Olomana property area, right up by the fire department. When you turn up that road, it's right by the elementary school.
That's with Zach, yeah? Working with Zach?
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, okay. That's right.
And then currently doing the same thing here at WCC, taking care of the hale.
Yeah.
Organization, that's with that's with Partners in Development. Okay. Yes, my kai. Okay.
And then here with Kalavaya, still doing the hale stuff.
Oh, okay. Did I see you that day we came and gathered lau from you folks? That is the day, because you look familiar, and then when you said okay, sorry. My eyesight is bad, and then when it's on Zoom, it's even worse. So I do recognize now. Yes, and thank you for those lau. We needed those to finish our holiday that day.
And we just pulled the ones off of Kahikili. So
thank you so much. Yeah, mahalo nunui. Yeah, yes. Okay, mahalo. I guess Colette, is it?
Aloha, I'm Colette Higgins. So I am a dean at Windward Community College. So I oversee Division 1, which is Humanities and Language Arts. So Hawaiian Studies and Hawaiian Language would fall under my kuleana as dean. And then I also oversee academic support. I'm the administrative lead for early college as well. So I attend all of those meetings. And let's see. Why am I here today and what do I hope to get out of it? Okay, I'm going to go back into teaching in fall of 2022. I get to teach my Hawaiian history again, which I love teaching. Back in the day when I taught it, when I was a teacher at KCC, at Kapi'olani Community College, I used to bring students to Taro Patch and Fish Pond and on the Windward side, right? And by the way, I grew up in Kaimiki, so I'm a Kaimiki girl. Graduated Kaimiki, and then we started moving further and further east, I guess, yeah. Hawaii Kai, Waimanalo, Kailua, and finally got married, bought a house in Kaneohe. So this is where I live. 15 minutes from campus. I love being at Windward. 15-minute commute, not going over the Pali anymore. And so when I used to take my students and fellow faculty members out into the fish pond and the taro patch, I discovered something about myself. I loved getting muddy and dirty and into the taro patch and I just enjoyed it so much. Maybe I just so much of a townie, grew up in Honolulu, not enough of that getting muddy stuff. I really found it invigorating. And so when I go back into the classroom, I intend to provide the Ikekaya Ulu community engagement option to my students so they can go and get muddy and dirty and really appreciate the Aina as well and be part of the service. So I want to incorporate it once again into my classes and have my students do it. So I'm very encouraged to learn more about your program. I've heard all about your program and it's like, okay, I've never been there. I know others have. And so I'm looking forward to this. Thank you.
Oh, Maikai, thank you for sharing. Wow, that's a lot of hats you wear. Yeah, that's a lot of hats. Mahalo. Maybe John, if you would.
Sure thing. Aloha mai kako. My name is John. I'm a student worker here for the WCC Media Group. Work under David Fry. I am in fact here because it's my job to record and collect for the sake of preserving, all the knowledge that we're about to receive today. But other than that, it was also a chance for me to sit in and have this seminar and listen to the knowledge that, you're about to bring to the table. And I'm very excited. As far as my connection to activities such as this, I work on a lot of Hawaiian wood carvings. And so one of the things is any implements that, are mentioned are always fun things for me to relate to. And to, if I haven't used one yet, the next step for me is usually to make it. So excited to see what you bring to the table today. Thank you for having me.
Mahalo. Thank you. And you're from?
I live in Honolulu, but I travel over to Kaneohe.
Oh, okay. Mahalo. And then I guess my eyesight is going bad, so I think it's Hivalani. If you would be so willing to just kind of name where you're from and then why you chimed in. Did you get lassoed and tied down to be on this Zoom, or is there a desire perhaps?
Aloha mai kako wauno Hivalani. I grew up in Pa'auhau Hamakua, which is close to Waipio Valley. And so I've been very fortunate to grow up in the taro patches. So
I recognize you.
Yeah, I'm from Kamehameha Schools, and I used to work at the Aina-based education department. And now I work with in the Ho'okahua Hawaiian Cultural Vibrancy Department. And so this is my second time attending the Ike Kaiaulu series. I'm learning so much, and I'm honestly not too familiar with Ho'okua Aina, so I want to learn as much as I can. I now live in Kapolei, so Oahu is now my new community. So it's, really, I'm really interested in learning what's out there here and, what new learnings are there, because there's always something you can learn. Yeah. Oia wale.
Hiva, who's mom and dad?
My mom is, she's a Kanaka Ole. So my mom is, her name is Melva. And then my father is, he's Haole. Yeah.
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 And his name? Yeah, well, mahalo for sharing that. I'm assuming your time spent in Naloi is down in Waipio, in that area there. Yeah, wow. As I see it, that's the real deal, guys, for Aina. So mahalo for dialing in, I guess.
Yeah, mahalo everybody. It's exciting, Hivalani, that you've been to another Ike Kaiaulu and enjoyed it enough to return. Can I ask which session you actually were able to participate in?
It's a Council for Humanities.
Ah, yeah. Yeah, nice. Yeah, it's a really nice series enabling people that haven't been able to connect to places find a way to connect to places. So that's really exciting. Dean, I also forgot that I didn't say where I was from. So may I?
Sure. Yes.
Yeah, my ohana is the Hapai ohana from Kohala and the Nelson family from Makawao, Maui. But I grew up in Aiea and for a period lived down the road in the housing by Kaneohe below Red Roof, like right below where I work. So it's kind of a combination, but mostly I grew up in. And my dad's side of the family, deep sea fishermen from Kona.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's me.
Yes. Well, mahalo for sharing that, for all of you. And I think that's everybody. So that's perfect. You know, I will always share because I do work with, or have worked with for many years with youth from challenged backgrounds. And oftentimes when I ask them to go around and share, you know, the base, just kind of what we ask, your name, where you're from, and maybe why you're here, what you're learning about it, it tends to make a lot of them feel very uncomfortable because that's not necessarily a setting that, or something that they're used to doing. But what I always point out is that, well, of course, I always thank everybody for sharing what they have. But I always point out that, you know, we all have a powerful mo'olelo, which I'm assuming most of us understand as it's our story, but it's also our history. And that whatever was shared, it's just really just the tip of the iceberg, right? That with everything that it comes from below us, but that especially for these young people who are really challenged at understanding the value of their lives, right? That they have a mo'olelo that is unique and different to everybody else. And that when they have the opportunity to stand before others, yeah, it's then that Hawaiian expression, yeah, palike kua mahina ke alo. Stand erect and upright like the pali, and like the glow of the mahina, yeah, stand in confidence with who you are and what you share, because we all have unique experiences that nobody else has, and hence whatever we share is of great value. So I was sharing with Noy a little earlier that, you know, I prefer to have this more as a discussion kind, as opposed to this isn't like a TED talk kind of stuff. I cannot do that kind of stuff. I like engagement, and so personally, I'm challenged by Zoom. I'm very challenged by Zoom because pilina and relationship and healo is so important to me that and normally when I'm you know, in a setting where I just have my Bora Bora shorts on and my puka shirt to go jump in the patch with whoever comes, and that's kind of how I feel most comfortable engaging people. And so this is a little challenging, but I thank you for going through this with me, because it helps, at least if I can't speak for you, but at least helps me to gain a sense of pilina with all of you. So mahalo for your words and what little you shared, because I know there's much mana behind all of you. So mahalo nunui. For myself, I guess a little bit of my mo'okuauhau, relating to place is I grew up in town in part, and in what was once known as Mauna Lua out in Hawaii Kai. My parents were able to purchase a house back in the early 70s when that was kind of like the new kapolei development on Oahu. My father comes from Switzerland. So he came here as the first executive chef of the Kahala Hilton Hotel. He came here as a highly skilled chef, and at that time in the mid 60s, they were looking for European know-how to run these newly formed hotels that were popping up all over the place, yeah, namely in Waikiki and in his case in Kahala. My mom grew up in her early years, her formative years in Nanakuli on the homestead, on the old homestead side, which most people refer to as Keaunanas or Zablan Beach side. So on the original, that's on the Makai side. Those are the first homestead developments. My grandfather was born in there, and my mother and her siblings, the oldest ones, were born there. And then I think when she was about 8, 7, 8, they moved into town, where my grandmother was from. And that's where she grew up, in town. My grandmother hails from Oahu, but her roots are Honaunau on Hawaii Island, and her father, who wasn't her biological father, hails from Ka'u. And she spent much time there at latter years. And my mother spent summers there in Miloli'i, where they would often go for their summer vacation or summer breaks off of school. So I grew up, I remember my grandfather referring to me as once going golfing, he referred to me in introducing me to some of his friends as, oh, this is my grandson, my Haole grandson, Dean.
I was also referred to as Honolulu baby by my Hawaiian side of the family. So that is like a combination of placing myself as the Honolulu baby, but also the Haole girl. So that's what my Hawaiian side, I got the same as Dean. Dean, I was just saying that my family also called me Honolulu baby, but that's kind of a loaded thing by calling me Honolulu baby, because also Haole girl. So the blonde Hawaiian thing, yeah. So I understand.
But for my grandfather, I was just Punahele of all the grandchildren. I know, and everybody knew that. So I didn't see it necessarily as a negative term, but I can say from early on, I really started to ponder the question of, well, what does it mean to be Haole? Because I'm a part of this ohana. And then conversely, what does it also mean to then be Hawaiian? So I had the privilege of getting accepted in kindergarten, not because I was of anything, I just got lucky and to go to Kamehameha. So that's my educational experience, coming from Kamehameha K through 12, as well as my sister. So we both, I only have one sister. So, and I share with you that mo'olelo because, or this mo'okuauhau of mine, because I from early on contrasted the way, I spent much time with my grandparents. Yeah. It was a second home for me. That's why I say I lived in town, and then also where my grandparents lived, and then also I really just slept in Hawaii Kai, because I spent most of my time up at Kapalama. Most of my days were spent there, and oftentimes we would just go and eat at grandma's house on the way to go home and sleep, if not sleep at grandma's house. So I often contrasted the lifestyle and of the stories my father would share, because he came from a small, very humble background in Switzerland. Grew up on a little farm, and while his father was a mason by trade, my grandfather was a mason by trade. They basically grew all the food that they ate. They had a cow that they milked every morning, and they had rabbits that they would use as their primary source of protein. Of course, milk and cheese products are heavy protein sources out there in Switzerland. And then they had fields outside of on their property, but outside, where they grew corn and potatoes. And then in summer, they had a garden that they pretty much lived off of all year. And I remember once going up, we got a chance to go when I was 5, walking through the woods, which was a part of, they had a parcel of woods, which was where they gathered all their firewood. Yeah, because even when I was there, when my grandparents were living, which, I'm not super old, I'm 53, but when I was there up until I think like middle school, they only had a wood burning stove. And that's how my grandmother cooked everything. I mean, you got to set it's not only the thing that warmed up the whole house from that stove, but it's what you had to make the fire to cook on, off wood burning stove. So they had to gather wood. It's always the year before you gather, then you bring it down, you fall the tree, you chop it, you let it dry out over the course of the year. So, you cannot run out of wood. Yeah. So it's something that they lived in. I remember going to the woods when they were just going to have kind of like a barbecue in the woods. And my dad had this frown on his face, and I asked him, "What's wrong?" And he said, "It would never have looked like this when I was your age." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "You see all the small branches, all the kindling? Yeah, we gathered all of that up. Nothing was wasted." Which, you know, told me that times had changed already since he was a young child there, that they had already, you know, progressed, I guess, to the sense that they didn't need to do that because they had other means of finding kindling, which wasn't available at his time, which was coming off shortly after World War II. My grandfather, on the other hand, would share with me stories of how he and his brother would paddle their va'a down to Kalailoa, Barber's Point, and drift back to Nanakuli with the current while hand lining for fish and paddling their boat up to the shore. And like in the old days, you know, holding the fish out and passing out to the community that they were living in. As you know, really young men, or young boys, really doing that and being a part of their food system. And so contrasting these two very, very different worlds and manners, you know, my mother and dad, the tension was for them was always getting someplace and what time, because, you know, Swiss aren't known as being the world's watchmakers because they show up late. And, you know, my mother, and I'm not saying that this is necessarily a Hawaiian thing because my grandparents weren't on, I think it's just my mom, but she was always, you know, time was a little more, you know, a little more loose as to when you needed to be certain places at certain times. And there was always this tension in the household of these two contrasting mindsets, I guess. So that's kind of, I guess, the mindset that I come from, and I think helps to, I would like to hope lay kind of the foundation for your understanding as to where I'm coming from. So, you know, I go to Kamehameha schools, and I go to Kamehameha in the early 70s when it's the beginning of what we now refer to as the Hawaiian Renaissance. Yeah. So here I am, this haole boy who's growing up in this Hawaii Kai area that's all this new suburbia that where all these supposed affluent people live. I didn't see ourselves as affluent. I saw ourselves as, you know, fine, but not like rich. Of growing up and being the haole boy at a school with, you know, primarily with Hawaiians, a few who look like me, but most of them, you know, not. And really gaining a sense of pride in who that part of me is. And I would contrast that with stories that my mother would share when they had moved from Nanakuli into town, and she's going to school and they're trying to acclimate in town. And I think that that era was when you would kind of powder your face, that was kind of the makeup days of the late 50s and early 60s. And she would purposely do that and not go into the sun, so that she would kind of try to blend in, I guess, a little bit more, not be so dark. And really sharing how, you know, she wasn't, that was synonymous with this feeling of kind of being shamed, not taking pride, at least, maybe not being shamed. She never said she was shamed, but not taking pride in who you are. Yeah. So I contrast that with my own life experience, which was completely contrary. And because she had struggled, and she came from a pretty dysfunctional family in the sense of, you know, verbal and physical abuse, which I don't think was considered abuse back then, but definitely is. And so she sought to shower both my sister and I with positive affirmation, and this affirmation in being Hawaiian, which she never, I guess, stepped into and experienced herself. So that's kind of a lot to begin this discussion. Thank you for bearing with me if you're still there. I don't know, some people might have left. So ho'okua'aina. Yeah, let's fast forward. So I'm an educator by trade. I taught in the DOE for a number of years, and I taught at Olomana School for 11 of the nearly 15 years that I taught in the DOE. My last 5 years, I was a teacher in HYCF, the Hawaii Youth Correctional Facility, our state prison for youth. And and I taught in my last 5 years the incarcerated boys. It was really there that, well, it wasn't really there. The reason I taught at Olomana is because I started off teaching at Kala Hill, and could have easily stayed there. I played basketball in high school, was very into it, and I went there and kind of taught with one of the coaches there. They have a very amazing basketball program, and I think I was kind of positioned to maybe become at least the JV coach and maybe one day the head coach there in the program. But that wasn't of greatest interest to me. And while I'm interested in teaching kids, my heart is for teaching Hawaiian kids and specifically kids who have come from challenged backgrounds. So I made a shift to go and teach at Olomana School and got an opportunity, and hence started doing that, which the demographics are completely different than Kala Hill in the sense of teaching Hawaiian kids. So it's just simply my preference. I'm not, so how did Ho'oku'aina begin, I guess? So my wife and I, we had, my parents passed away at a very young age. We had an opportunity based on, they had a house. My sister bought it out. I had this little chunk of change, or this big chunk of change actually back then. And we were able to purchase a house. And so it enabled me when my first daughter was born. We like, before I was just kind of like surfing during the day, waiting tables at night with my degree, and then I was like, oh, I gotta like get real with life, And so here I am, almost 30, thinking, okay, what do I want to do? And so I know I'm a social person, and I enjoy people. So I thought, well, maybe teaching would be for me. So I went back to school, got my teaching credential. We move into this place at Olomana. I got to kind of step up and be a father now, whatever that means, and but at least get a stable job, yeah. And so my wife grew up, she's from very Northern California from the country, and she grew up gardening with her grandparents. That was a big part of her life experience. They were country folk. And so, being that my dad loves to eat, and my grandfather, by the way, owned restaurants, he actually opened up the Chart House in Kaneohe, which was the Chart House, now it's Haliva Joe's with Don Ho. Anyway, that's a whole nother tangent. But I grew up, I was destined to be a foodie in the sense that I ate well from day one. And we're talking the whole expanse of food. Yeah, he was Hawaiian Chinese. So he cooked a lot of Chinese and Hawaiian. So I had that. And then of course my dad's European kind of cuisine. So I ate good from day one, and just, that was normal to me. And so when you know how to eat, and I was always interested in learning how to cook. So I just watch and I learned how to cook. So we have our own place. And, when you learn how to cook, you realize that it's really the ingredients that make or break the entree, because cooking is kind of actually quite basic. Once you know the basics, you can kind of expand from there and do any kind. So, so we had a garden because we were wanting to eat healthy and like that off of this small little area that we had in our small yard. And at one point I started planting some kalo because I wanted the lau to make luau, lau and luau. I love that. And so when we started growing the lau, I just felt so empowered that I didn't have to go all the way out to Kahalu'u and go and buy luau leaf from the Wangs. Yeah, I could go and grow my own. And the lau just tasted way more ono when it was the leaves from our place. So what I would do when I had enough lau is I would call up friends and say, hey, I'm gonna make lau this weekend. And I think us guys know, yeah, when you make lau, you're not gonna make 5, you're gonna make like 50 to 500 is how we make them. So I'm gonna make lau if you guys like, come over. And the next thing you know, our carport is filled with people and we're making lau. And then I play music too. I've been playing music professionally for over 20 years. So, the instruments come out, and then it's all these positive things going on. And we started doing this like quarterly. Yeah, every time the leaf come up good, we would start to do that. And then I started making imu in my backyard and almost burned down the fence because the backyard too small, and smoke out the whole neighborhood. So these gatherings are getting bigger in our carport. These occasions were amazing in the sense that while people were there coming to eat lau, they were really there to make connections. Yeah, connections with one another. And when we live the life that we live, we're all so busy. Really, these times are really special and precious to make foods first together and communally in the really Hawaiian sense, but really spend time together an authentic conversation takes place when you're there 2 hours before prepping the lau lau, and you cannot help but engage in authentic conversation. It can't just, it's got to go beyond surface, right? So we realized people were there really for the connections and the relationships. So now I'm teaching at Olomana School. And I was teaching at that point English. And, having a really hard time connecting with these youth, many who had not gone to school that much. And anybody who doesn't go to school much, the last subject they want to do is English. And so really challenged, yeah. And so one day I just came to I'm really trying to connect with these kids. So one day I brought up my pick and shovels, and we went up to Olomana, right outside my classroom. I just picked up an area with my students, and I brought huli to plant kalo. And against the groundskeeper was all nuha with me, because he thought I wasn't going to maintain or make mess for him and everything. I told him, no worry, I'm going to take care. I started planting kalo with them, and then I started infusing in the curriculum. I started infusing the literature was Hawaiian culture, specific to the cultivation of kalo. And so we were using that, as well as I was using music and poetry as a means to try to work on their language arts skills. And then I guess you could say our culminating activity was when we had leaf. We would harvest the leaf, and then we would make lau lau. I would bring my steamers and everything up to school, and bring my pork butt and everything. And it was an amazing experience, because when they had the opportunity to then share lau lau with each other, etc. Not only eat it, but I mean share with others, because we make plenty, give to some other students and some of the staff and teachers. The pride that they had, that not only had they made the lau lau, but they took part in the growing of the kalo that enabled that. And what was really kind of interesting for me, but I guess kind of tragic for me, was all Hawaiian kids, and blood quantum more than Kamehameha School's Hawaiian kids now we're talking about, okay? That few of them had ever made lau lau before, let alone really knew what it was made out of. And so I saw it as a powerful, powerful teaching tool. So these two things are going on in my life. Struggling to make connections with these kids, and then having these really beautiful occasions taking place. Realizing that we're outgrowing our place. And when we first were able to get the place in my early 30s, I thought I was going to die at that house. I mean, we had arrived. We're so blessed. But now we start to have these thoughts of, we need a bigger place. And what if we could find a place that could have maybe a permanent imu, and then a big garden where people could come take part. And we could have these occasions on a regular basis, and invite the students from school and potentially even their families to come and take part. What if that? And the whole premise behind this was using food, to be real honest, as really the carrot, but not just making food, but taking part in the growing of the food, which connects us to not only that food, but also the place that it comes from and all that takes part, and using that as a means to then really create greater well-being for oneself. And that was our whole that was the big idea, as people say when you're developing some kind of business of sorts. So that's really what it was. And at some point, first we were thinking, so now we are in Maunawili, in the Mauka section of Kailua, but we were in Kailua living. All my kids have been born at Castle, Kailua. We were hoping maybe for a place back roads Waimanalo or something like that, just some aina. I mean, if I could grow, my kids are also going to Kikulo Kamakau. We started them with immersion, my three girls. And so that was a big influence on me as well. And I met a taro farmer there who was growing kalo once, and growing kalo way up Mauka in Maunawili. And his name is Mark Stride, and had gone up and cleared out the area. It was just crazy living up there and just off the grid to the maxis with his kids. And we would go up a few times and go help him weed and care for it a little bit. And the school was doing that. Kikulo Kamaka was taking our kids there on a regular basis. And one day we huki kalo, yeah, and we cooked it and ate it and then pounded it into poi. And I can tell you the first thought that came to my mind when I ate that poi, it was like I felt deceived having eaten taro brand poi my whole life. Because not that taro brand poi is bad, but that it was nothing like what I was eating there. And then it made me want to transition to not only do I want to grow kalo for, this was way before, not only kalo just for laulau, I want to grow kalo for the poi. Yeah. So the goal was to find aina, and if could find aina with water would be, and then also, you know, bias to the kalo wai, which is the dryland kalo. And I know, like, if you're from Kona or you're from Puna, you know, guys going to maybe debate as to which is better, mala style kalo or, you know, kalo wai style. I'm not going to get into that debate. For me, my preference is wet taro. And I think that for poi. So anyway, it came to the point where we just, against the sound and loving advice from all of our close family and friends, we sold our house with 3 young kids. My oldest was 5, the youngest was less than a year, in pursuit of looking for aina anywhere from Waimanalo out to Hauula. The journey was long, and it took us, and, you know, had we known what the journey and the sacrifice would have been prior to us going on the journey, we probably would have said no, to be real honest. But looking back at it now, it's something we'd never change. It's been a journey, and it continues to be a journey. And so we came upon this place. It is in the, again, Ahupa of Kailua, and the place referred to today is Mauna Wili. The specific aina is, the Ili aina name is Kapalai. It's actually, we were hoping for like a half acre, maybe acre, and we were able to, it's nearly 8 acres of aina. And the amazing thing is that it's all on marshland with punawai underneath. So we have an abundance of water. And but don't get me wrong, there's a complete forest and jungle before we, so if it's taken, there's no infrastructure at all, nothing. And we just kind of pioneered this aina. That was over 14 years ago, 14 and a half now. So the basis for Ho'okua Aina, really the mindset is that, as Noi, I think you mentioned earlier, is like, we often like to say that it is through the growing of kalo that we grow young people and community. So the growing of kalo is really, it's a means to what we see as an even more important end, but they're tied to one another because it's a holistic approach to health and well-being. And that, you know, we tend to think that, oh, we growing the kalo, yeah, but we're not really growing the kalo. It's the aina and the la and everything else that grows the kalo. We help to facilitate its growth, but we don't grow the kalo. And that actually, to the contrary, that it's really the kalo that grows us. Yeah, and that's what we have found, what I have found individually as we have been on this journey. You know, I've been fooling around with kalo for over 20 years, but, you know, it's when we came to this aina over 14, almost 15 years now, that we started to be serious about it. And so, but it's all the benefits that come from that and the utilization of that. And not only, and of course, the primacy of kalo as the, you know, I mean, with the story of Haloa as well as kalo being the staple food of our people, you know, and while that again varied by region, and some people would say in Ka'u is maybe the sweet potato, or to me, I'm almost convinced, yeah, that kalo was like the gold standard of the economy. And so, and Hawaiians, as we all know, prefer to eat it in the form of poi. So everything that stems off of the kalo. So it's not that we're just necessarily farming, but kalo is the foundation of what we farm and what we cultivate, I should say. But again, it's a means to a greater end, which is we're looking to first, you know, I think many approaches to aina are that people, the aina is what is most important, and you work to do that. Our focus is the individual, and our belief is that healthy individuals will help to create healthy aina, and that's probably the best approach for it to happen. So that's kind of, I guess, our approach and how it has been. And now, so 10 years ago, we formed a nonprofit organization called Ho'okua'aina. Fortunately, right after we got in touch, got this land, there was a kupuna by the name of Uncle Earl Kava'a, who hails from, many of you may know him, but he hails from Halawa, Molokai. He's, I think, going to be 77 this year. So he's the same age as my mom was. They born same year. Piha Hawaii. And he grew up, they spoke Hawaiian at home, and they were taro farmers. So he's like the real deal. And I would say that the knowledge he possesses is kind of like more like my great grandparents' kind of generation, as opposed to, say, my mother's generation, by far, because many Hawaiians, whether Hawaiian, full Hawaiian or not, did not have that same kind of experience. So, and he came on early on and has really been our mentor here. And he actually gave us the name Ho'okua'aina. Once we're working in the patch and we're looking for a name for a nonprofit organization, and my wife Michelle and I, we both are the executive directors of the organization, we come up with a few names and translated into Hawaiian based on kind of our mana'o and our thoughts of what we envision this place being. And I shared with him once. So as we're working in the patch one day in the afternoon, I told him, hey, Uncle, Michelle and I, we're thinking of a name for our nonprofit organization, and we think we should call it this. And, and he don't say nothing, he just keep working. So well, it's kind of like straight line. So, okay. So I keep working. So about maybe not quite 10 minutes later, but I build up the courage. So, Uncle, there was another name we were thinking of. And so I share the name with him, and again, crickets, he don't say nothing. We just keep working. Yeah, I'm not going to strike out. That's it. I'm not asking for his thoughts. So we keep working, and he pokes his shovel in the lepo, and he looks at me and he says, for me, I am kua'aina. But for you and many in your generation, you want to become kua'aina. So I think you should name your organization Ho'okua'aina. And for those of us maybe not familiar with the word kua'aina, kua means back, aina means land, so literally backland. But it was the kua'aina who were the people who lived in the backland. They were the backbone, I would say, of society. They were the mahi'ai kalo. And anytime you add a ho'o in front of a Hawaiian name, it means to make or to become. So to become kua'aina, yeah. And so. And it really is. It's not just like simply planting kalo. It's really embracing the values and the mindset and the practices and way of being of the kua'aina. And so, that's a journey that we have been on in growth. And I think I come from a generation when I look back at my father and how he grew up, very kua'aina. And when I think of my farm connection to aina, I actually think of more of my father's side, to be real honest, than my mother's side, because my grandfather was a fisherman, and they come from that. So, so that's kind of the name of our organization, and we've been now going for 10 years. I left the DOE 8 years come May. We were able to transition out. Then my wife came on a year later. We hired another staff, and we're still growing. We have a number of programs, and if you're interested in them, you can check out our website, which is really I'm not much of a tech guy by any means, and I don't really peruse our website or others much, but we do have an amazing website. And if you're interested to learn more about what we do and who we are, I would encourage you to just take a look, because there's a lot of information there. Thank you for still being there. That was a lot to digest, and I will just kind of leave it at that and maybe go with questions, because that's kind of as much as I can share about us and who we are.
Just did a TED Talk. Woohoo!
Oh my gosh, no.
So cool. So awesome. I mean, so inspirational, actually. I think all I kept thinking was, man, he's living, everybody's dream. To be able to do something like that, I think would make a lot of people now very, very happy. Like, just the ability to do what you love, and then the ability to kind of incorporate everything you did in your life into this one place and be able to continue it is so inspiring. I find, and then really thinking about the health and wellness of an entire group of, people, Hawaiian boys in your case. Health and wellness, I think, is something that people are really leaning towards most recently, and I think it's because of what we've gone through in the last 2 years. So I think that's you were ahead of your time in thinking about how the connections to the Aina create health and wellness automatically, and I think that's great. Does anybody have any questions? I don't want to hog up the talking time.
I've got a question. I'm so inspired by your desire to connect to the Hawaiian men or the boys, right? Those are struggling. It sounds like somehow the land or the working of the land or growing the food somehow changed them. Is that true? So, I mean, it sounds like that's what's gotten you on this path. You saw something that was working with these guys. Yeah. So if you could elaborate on that and sort of what your observation has been and why it works so well.
Sure. I think we have definitely seen that take place, and to share that, our programs, first, the heart of our programming is working with challenged and at-risk youth. The first people who were coming here were boys in the lockup. Yeah, and when we first were able to get some funding through we didn't even have a nonprofit organization. It went through what do you call a fiscal sponsor, and we were able to pay some small stipend or intern kind of pay or participant pay. They were the boys from my students that I was having at school. I had at school, and we have seen that it does impact you in ways that we have sought to measure and demonstrate in many ways in these last 10 years, and we're continuing to try to grow in everything. As I think most of you are all kind of educators of sorts, yeah. It's all based on evidence and data, right? It's all this data collection, and so it's tough. It's tough to put your finger on it, yeah. I mean, it's like looking at the clouds and going, man, I know those things are real, but the closer you get to it, and as you walk to it, you can't really tangibly grab it or hold it, but it's real. And so we've found ways of really gathering data to demonstrate that it does take place, and while we've moved from working with at-risk youth to then school groups want to come, because once teachers hear about it, they come. And so we have a education program K through college actually that comes. We actually have a program in partnership with Windward Community College called our ASA program, where students similar to Ma'o Farms and what they've been doing, we were actually encouraged by our good friends there to do something similar to them on our Windward side, and starting off as one community org, and hoping that others will join and become a part of that, to really give these students an opportunity to further their formal education at Windward Community College, while gaining, what we serve is education as worthy, ike kupuna, and cultural Hawaiian education, doing what we do. But what we really do is we become a support system for them through their educational journey, and then through just this journey of transition from really into this formal transition from childhood to adulthood, right? Which is kind of what I see high school graduation is symbolizing in our society today. That's kind of a rite of passage, as I see it, as formal a rite of passage as we have. And so that's another program we've developed. We have our community, interest from community want to come. So usually every Saturdays is when we host members in the community, and people come from all around the world. Literally, it's crazy how they find out about us. I mean, I know it's our website, and then people from right down the street, and then we also have incidentally, while kalo is a means to a larger end, we've also become the largest producer of kalo on the island of Oahu today, and we make poi every other week, and we've harvested on the last 5 years on average 30,000 pounds of kalo, which we sell mostly in the form of raw kalo, for those who buy and purchase kalo, and then 20 pounds take home. They maybe kui or steam it or whatever, however they cook it, and that's what we encourage the most, as opposed to creating a value-added product, as they say, in the form of poi, or what we call aipa'a or kalopa'a, just the table chunks. I call them Scooby snacks, because that's how I just pop them in my mouth and then I'm ready to rev like Scooby. So we have all these programs, but when it comes to the changing of lives, we've seen it on various levels. And while I will share that the growing of kalo is a very Hawaiian thing, it's not exclusively Hawaiian by any means. It's a human thing. We all are indigenous to some place. Yeah, we all have relations to land and aina in every part of the world. Whether we like it or not, I mean, those guys who want to move to Mars one day, I don't think they're going to have a real good chance growing food up there too well, at least in the first 15 years or whatever. But here we're going to continue to have to learn how to work with our environment in order to simply live. As advanced as mankind has become or wants to be, we're still just, we're fragile beings who need to eat well and drink clean water. And I believe we have been designed to have relationship with Aina, Pilina. And so it's something that, is not seen or maybe valued today. I think it's maybe being more valued and seen that, but it's not like that's not the trend of the world, to be quite honest. The trend of the world is in the opposite direction. And so we know that we're swimming upstream against the current that, it's unfair of me to say it, but, there's this trend to create this Walmartization of the world, right? Where it's all kind of homogenous and all the same. That's unfair. Walmart's not necessarily bad, but it's just everything that it represents. But that's just society at large today, at least in our Western world and here in Hawaii as well. I mean, we're becoming homogenized so that, our places look like places and communities could be here or in, Maryland or something. I don't know. It just seems we're fighting against this tide to retain, I believe, what makes Hawaii unique, what makes it special. And is not only good for Hawaii or people who call Hawaii home, but it's good for the world, because I think there's a lot we have to share and say to benefit others. So anyway, I'm blah, blah, blah. I think it does, getting back to the statement or question, Colette, yes, we have seen an impact and we continue to see that. It happens at various levels. And for some, to be quite honest, it doesn't work and they don't connect, and that's okay. At least they'll connect that it's not for them, so but we believe fully that in the need for it for our own individual as well as communal well-being.
Definitely. I love the part where you said we're creating Pilina with the Aina and connecting. And I think that that's something that is many people, well, I shouldn't say that we are realizing. There are groups of people that have known this for a very long time, and there's people that are realizing it. But it is a very important thing that we cannot disconnect ourselves from the Aina, because it causes pain. So I'm just thrilled to now know your story of Ho'opua Aina, right down to how you were named, which I think is fabulous. And I'm now going to make it, I mean, it was a goal before, but now I'm definitely going to make it a goal to come and stick my foot in the mud and see what it's all about. It's fabulous that your daughter, Makana, is now teaching at Windward Community College. So it's a nice connection that we have with you and with your ohana. So it's great to know the story behind it. Looks like we are at 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
Right now. And I think that I can definitely say that everybody that's here will have learned quite a bit about you and your organization. And what I'm really excited about is that we have it recorded, and now anybody that wants to know more, it will be up on our website for them to learn more about all of that. So thank you for the inspiration. Now I want to do the same thing. I just need to break it to my husband that we're now going to buy 8 acres of land and we're going to work it and try and put in the infrastructure for the land. But
Yeah.
not an easy feat, but a wonderful, wonderful fulfillment of a dream. So thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. I appreciate your time, and all of you that have come today. Thank you for your time and taking the time out to learn more. So mahalo, mahalo, mahalo.
Mahalo nui. And if you are interested in coming, check out our website, and that's where you can kind of get yourself connected and find a time that hopefully works for you well. So thank you again.
Kotin, I just had one quick question. Sorry. What kind of kalo do you grow at Okuaina? What type of varieties do you guys have there?
You know, I started off with experimenting with about 30 different Hawaiian varieties, and when I mean that, kupuna varieties, yeah. And we honed it into one, and it's primarily the moi. We grow moi over here. We're opening up, and I'm getting back into getting more varieties now but moi is really our production kalo. It grows well here. Starchy, I love starchy kalo. I'm biased to it, to be real honest. And so that's what we grow. It grows well here, yeah, for us.
Mahalo.
Yes, if you ever want to, let me know. We always give away. Yes.
All right.
Okay.
I guess that will be our day today.